Well, also joining us now, Dr. Parrish is someone that you know very well. She is also, like you, the voice of calm and the face of reason before, during, and after any earthquake. And she's seismologist with the US Geological Survey and, of course, at Caltech, Dr. Lucy Jones. Hi, Lucy Jones.
Good afternoon.
So do you think that we are any closer to predicting exactly the minutia of when a quake's going to happen? Are you with Dr. Parrish that it's not going to happen in our lifetime?
Not the time. I mean, we predict a lot of things about earthquakes. We can predict where they're likely to happen. We understand the role of faults, and we produce, the US Geological Survey with the California Geological Survey jointly produces hazard maps that show you where they're going to happen. We can tell you what's going to happen when they do happen. We do a very good job of saying what's the shaking and the damage. And even on when, we can tell you the rate of earthquakes. There will be 20 or 30 today in California. Mm-hmm. The one thing we can't do is say what's the time of one particular event. And the key to the problem is you want to know not just that there's going to be an earthquake, but that it's going to be a big earthquake. And our problem is that big and small earthquakes seem to start the same way. And if what happens before a big one is the same as what happens before a small one, we'll never be able to predict them.
And there's some sirens running by you there. They seem to follow Dr. Lucy Jones around. So when this big one does happen, what will it look like and feel like? Dr. Parrish, Dr. Jones, go ahead and chime in. Will it be different?
What's one of the things that's really different about a really big one? There's two things. It's a big one because it's on a bigger fault. And that means that a lot more people are right on top of the earthquake. And when you're right on top of the earthquake, you get a lot more shaking than even a small distance away. So we're going to have a lot more people in the heavily damaged areas. And anyone who was in Chatsworth and Northridge can tell you that's really different than being a little distance away. The other thing is that because it has to go up a very long fault, it lasts for a longer time. And our estimate is that the 1906 earthquake at San Francisco lasted for about 100 seconds. By contrast, Northridge lasted for 7 seconds. Mm.
And something to add on top of that, too, is the impact it has on California. About 70% of California's population and businesses and infrastructure is within about 30 miles of a fault that's capable of doing considerable damage. So California's population and economy is very much at risk with faulting in California with earthquakes.
Mm-hmm. And just this week there was research saying that the big one could be even bigger than everyone thought, this wall-to-wall trembler, right?
Well, we've actually, the news there wasn't very newsy. It was like the San Andreas can have a magnitude 8. Wow. In fact, I think we knew that. What it was is that it shows us that there's one part of the fault. The new research is showing one part of the fault has earthquakes more often than was previously thought. So it somewhat increases the likelihood that, it's like we've always known we're going to have a big earthquake sometime, pretty soon. The chances that it's going to be a 7.9 versus the chances that it's going to be an 8.1. We sort of shifted a little towards the 8.1. That's not a big difference for most people.
Mm-hmm. So when you guys are going out to the mall or to the theater or whatever, I just have visions of you in public places thinking in your brain, okay, if it were to happen right now, this is what I would do.
Yeah, I definitely do that. And I used to teach my kids to do it. We used to play the earthquake game, and we'd be able to say earthquake and have to pretend that there was an earthquake happening, and what would we do? At home, we'd actually go and get under the table, but in a public place, I'd say, so what would we do now? Where would you go? And try to teach them that you shouldn't run during an earthquake. You try and get under a table to protect yourself from falling objects. If there's no table, go to an interior wall. But I often do, when I go inside a building, go, I wonder what I'd do this time.
It's always good advice for people to be aware of their surroundings whenever they're out in a building or traveling down a street or across a bridge, just to think, what would you do should an earthquake occur? And it can be helpful to just subconsciously almost look around for places to be if an earthquake occurred.
And Dr. Parrish, I noticed on your website it says that you're closed 3 days a month due to the furloughs. I hope it doesn't happen. You're not closed when the earthquake happens.
Well, we're open 24/7 when it comes to monitoring and response.
Good, of course. Well, great to have you, Dr. John Parrish, and stick around, Dr. Lucy Jones. We're going to bring in more guests, and we're going to talk about how is the state management preparedness, emergency management preparedness system working? How are they going to communicate to us, and what do we do to keep our home and our family and our loved ones prepared for what's going to happen? You're listening to Home Wizards, a very special earthquake safety edition. I'm Cindy Dole, and we're back in just a few.
I give it a 4.
Classic scene from the movie L.A. Story. Cindy Dole here as we're talking about earthquake safety, a very special edition of Home Wizards, and the entire 2 hours to get us ready for what's coming up this Thursday, the Great Shakeout. A chance to really practice and go through the motions of what you would do when the next one comes. And with me is Dr. Lucy Jones, a seismologist with the US Geological Survey, and of course the visiting research associate at Caltech, who was just saying moments ago that she and her kids do that all the time. They play earthquake. So, Lucy Jones, when you see a movie like that, what goes through your mind?
Oh, I usually have a good laugh.
Yeah.
and one of the reasons it's really sort of odd that California doesn't teach its citizens some of the basic facts about earthquakes that would help us learn to live with them. And I'd encourage people, there's some pretty basic, simple things you can learn that'll make them a lot less frightening and a lot more manageable.
Really? Like what?
Well, like to know that the duration of the earthquakes gives you the size of the event. You know, what you feel, you can't really tell how big it is because you need to know how far away you are. What you can do it from, though, is how long it lasts. The other thing is like that, being on top of a fault is worse, but we don't know which fault's going to be the next one. The other thing that affects the shaking is the type of soil that you're on. So if you're on right beside an old river channel, you're going to have amplified shaking every time you've got an earthquake. Mm-hmm. Another thing is that sort of basic, simple logic really is that your building's only as good as the building code that was in place when the building was built. So if your building is more than 10 years old, it probably can be made safer than it is right now.
Mm-hmm. How long have you lived in the L.A. area?
I'm actually a fourth-generation Southern Californian. I was born in St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, but I've been working here as a seismologist now for 27 years.
So, see, that gives me confidence that you know so much more than we do about earthquakes, and you're not moving.
Well, no, they're probably not going to kill you.
Yeah.
You're far more likely to be murdered in Los Angeles than die in an earthquake. What they're going to do is make your life really miserable afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think that the really big earthquake is going to disrupt things like our water system and our electric system. And, 2 weeks without a shower sounds pretty disgusting to me. So I think it's the whole thing of how to be prepared, both in making your house safer as well as having things to handle it afterwards. Mm-hmm. And this idea that, we don't like government telling us what to do. So we generally don't allow the government to order us around about what to do with our houses. But that means if it's going to be safer, it's because you've chosen to do it. And this idea that you're probably not safe because your building was built before everything we understand now was known. So
would you recommend for those of us who live in a home that is older than a 1970s architecture design thing that we should call someone and have them give us an analysis of a retrofit need, that kind of thing, do a survey?
Yes. Before 1997, there are a lot of changes in the building code that came through in 97. Anything older than that, and I've bought 3 houses in the Los Angeles area. Each time, the first thing we did was call a foundation specialist, have them come and look at the building and see what it could be done to be made safer. And the first time recommended both what's called sheeting the cripple wall. So in the crawl space, just literally nailing plywood between the 2x4s and the crawl space gives a great amount of seismic resistance. It doesn't cost very much. We spent $1,500 the first time with that and adding bolts. The second time we spent $500 just sheeting cripple wall. And the third time we bought slab on grade. We didn't end up having to do anything. But it's, every time we went and checked.
It sounds like it's really doable, too.
Oh, it's very doable. I know plenty of people who do it themselves. I personally have a thing about spiders. Much rather hire somebody to do it for me.
So you're not afraid of earthquakes, but then again, there's the spider thing.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, speaking of being a little afraid or not, is a guy who studies, I guess, how we all might respond socially and psychologically to something that I think a lot of us would feel is kind of scary, the big one. Dr. Jim Goltz, he's the manager of the earthquake program and tsunami program with CalEMA, which is the Emergency Management Agency. So thanks for Dr. Goltz, you being here with us. And you were saying you think